welcome to Coffee and Cannabis. I'm your host, Dr. Beast, Big Leader of the East, and this is my co-host, Gretchen Gailey, hailing all the way from DC.
Hello.
And we are in the Other Side Dispensary, you guys already know. It's very, very late. We have a very special episode for you. We couldn't make it to a coffee shop, but we figured why not be in our dispensary, drinking our K1 local bodega, because today we bring it right back home to Jersey City with mayoral candidate Mussab Ali.
Thank you for having me.
We are very happy to have you.
For the black tie edition.
Yes. You look clean.
Yeah, dress up for the podcast, make sure I'm looking mayoral,
I love it. I love it. And we're so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
We have been taking it from questions from local folks, from state, federal, but we want to bring it back to Jersey City because, the race is getting close. Mm-hmm. How many days we have?
94 days.
94 days. Mm-hmm. I know you got a countdown going.
Yes, we do.
Yes. So first and foremost, tell the people a little bit about you and why you're even running.
Sure. So I guess the best way to sort of describe my story is to start from where I was born. So I was born in Lahore, Pakistan. My family moved here when I was 3 years old. My father, actually, his first job was working at Newark Airport. So we moved here September of 2000, right? So September 11th, he has a job. September 12th, he lost his job because he had the most common name in the world, Muhammad.
Wow.
So that was basically my introduction to American politics, right? I didn't really realize that was politics or how things were happening around the world. But, went to public schools here. I went to PS6 a couple blocks away from here. Then I went to Academy 1 for middle school, deep in Greenville. And then I went downtown to McNair for high school. So I was at college at Rutgers Newark, and that was the first time I ended up running for office. I was 19 years old, so literally a teenager. And there's this quote from Trump about Jersey City. And he talks about thousands of people settling on the rooftops of Jersey City during 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And to me, 9/11 was a deeply personal moment, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the thing where my father lost his job. My mom, she actually wears the hijab. And I remember she told me for 3 years, no one sat next to her on the bus. Mm. And I have this memory actually as a kid where we were at Liberty State Park. And I remember these kids, teenagers, chasing my mom with stones and being like, go back to where you came from. So I'm like, man, this guy's talking about 9/11 in my city. There was no one celebrating, right? But he goes on TV the next day, and they ask him, they're like, look, we checked every TV channel. No one was celebrating. And he goes, no, I looked across the river, and I saw them celebrating, right? Doubles down on it.
Him and Sarah Palin.
And so I kind of was like, you know what? I should do something. That doing something turned to running for office. So I ran for school board. I was like, what else am I qualified for, right? I'm 19 years old. And somehow when I was 20, convinced the voters to select me.
Okay.
So that was sort of my first foray. And honestly, what happened is I got in office and I realized both one, the amount of power that exists, and two, how unrepresentative our representatives are, right? So when I was running for office, and I still remember my talking points, right, from when I was a 19-year-old, and I used to say to people, look, when we talk about education, we talk to parents, we talk to teachers, we talk to taxpayers, but who is talking to students? Yeah. They're the forgotten stakeholder of education. And so I said, listen, for the last 14 years, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, I saw how policy trickled into the classroom, right? That's my experience. Mm-hmm. So when I get in office, literally the first bill I ever write is to get a student to serve on the Board of Education. That actually ended up becoming a statewide model. Governor Murphy takes it, and now every single school board across the state has a student who sits on the Board of Education. Oh. But some bigger issues was the water fountains had been closed since I was in third grade, right? They found lead in the water. And so we started to tackle that issue. And this broader theme sort of emerged for me, which is this idea that I have always believed that those closest to the pain should be closest to the power, right? That the people who are experiencing these problems should have access to power to solve the problems that they're facing because they understand it the best. And so I did that for 4 years. I left, I went to law school. And when I came back, I saw that the mayor was running for governor. And I sort of looked at the city and I said, you know what, when are we going to get a leader from Jersey City who understands the city and has grown up here, but also has a vision for the future? And I sort of thought, you know what, I could be that person because I've seen the people being pushed out. I have the ideas of the future. I kind of see how the world has come together. I have a lot of different experiences. And that's why I'm running.
Okay.
What do you say to, naysayers who say you have zero experience, especially running a city?
Well, look, I would say I have more executive experience than a lot of people who are running, right? I mean, frankly, right, there are some people who are running who have served in legislative bodies. But as the executive on the school board, I actually drove agenda items, right? So I can point to the water fountains as a thing that I did. When it comes to increasing teacher minimum wage, I've actually probably negotiated with more unions than a lot of people who are running. And the budget that I had on the school district was actually larger than the city's budget. The school board budget at the time I was there was $814 million. We had 6,000 employees. The city's current budget is around $784 million. So even today, the city's budget is smaller than the budget I dealt with on the school side. And I'll be honest, in a lot of ways, I think running the school system is even more difficult because you got to realize, at least when you're dealing with regular citizens, right? Like they have the autonomy to speak and say, hey, like this is wrong, right? Like you're not cleaning up the trash on Central Avenue. Someone's going to let you know. But when you're dealing with young people, they don't even have the autonomy to tell you something's wrong. Like you have to go out there and investigate and figure it out. And I'll give you a great example of this. When I was the president of the Board of Ed, I gave every high school $10,000, right? I started a participatory budgeting project. I said, listen, I don't want the adults to tell me where this money's spent. I want to go to the students directly. Tell me where should we spend this money? Mm-hmm. Do you know what every single high school asked for?
No idea.
Fix our bathrooms.
How bad are the bathrooms?
Really bad. But think about this, right?
10 grand didn't go very far.
No. So we didn't. we didn't end up using the 10 grand, right? We ended up saying we're going to separately allocate money towards this. Sure. But the reality was, think about it, for years and years, these young people had dealt with bathrooms that didn't have doors, that didn't have soap, that didn't have working water fountains, right, or faucets, and no one did anything about it. And so to me, it's like, why are we not empowering everyday people to solve their problems and to alert us? I'm like, hey, what's actually going on? And so I think there's a ton of executive experience that I have from serving on the school board and all the stuff that we did there. And I'll be honest with you, we had a really tough challenge. I mean, I had to reopen the schools in the middle of the pandemic. The reason I became the president at 23 years old was not because I was some whiz kid and the rest of the board was just this guy's got to do it, right? The average age on my board was 67. These were people who had 50 years of experience who chose me to be the leader because they understood that I was the one who could get the job done. And we opened the schools in the middle of a once in a lifetime pandemic. And actually, to think about legislative policy, right? When you're in elected office, and I encourage to think about my opponents, right, who are running, how many people were actually able to get the governor to change his executive order? Mm-hmm. The governor's original executive order allowed healthcare workers to get vaccinated. That's all cool. His second executive order said if you were a smoker, you could get vaccinated, but teachers could not. I literally remember calling the chief counsel to the governor, having him amending the executive order, getting the teachers the vaccines, working with City Hall to get those vaccines allocated specifically for our teachers, striking a deal with the teachers union to reopen the schools. So he's some people could say that's not experience, but to me, that is a real process and a real project when there's no playbook for this, and we have to figure it out.
Speaking of getting things done, one of the greatest challenges in this city is getting things done across the board, right? Because it's not just the mayor, it's also the council body. And I'm going to tee this up a little bit with a story because it's been a little frustrating for me. So I got a call from a council member who, was asking me for some sort of support from something to go somewhere. And I said, not for nothing, I'm really disappointed with the rollout and the way that the cannabis program has been going in the city. And it's because of the council's approach that we are where we are, right? That there's been ordinances that have been stalled. And it brings me back to Bill also, the Hudson County Commissioner. He came on this show and he had said about his time as a council member, just talking about how it's, a relatively easy job that you just sort of go with what the majority of people say that they want and, kind of not ruffle any feathers. And I think what happens is when you run a city and you become a mayor, you are a leader, and now you have a team of other leaders that are going to lead with you, but other people have elected them. So it's probably not a whole team that you would have necessarily selected.
Right.
And now you have to have consensus on a lot of efforts that may be very ambitious for you. And, maybe some will be successful, maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, to push them through, it still takes this entire team. And what ends up happening is that the council, and going back to my frustration, I'll say, these are the challenges, and then they throw it on the mayor. And then, you chat with the mayor and he throws it on the council. And then you have the business owner in the middle of all of it. That's like, how do I get these solutions? That's frustrating for us to know that we're going to vote for someone and their ideas. But the reality is that if you don't have a team that's working with you to get these things passed, how are you, just speak to how you plan to work around that.
Yeah, look, I think this goes back honestly to my elected experience, right? So when I was on the school board, you got to realize there's certain fights that you can win and there's certain fights you can't win. And you also have to realize how do you build your coalition to get you to where you need to get to? And that means sometimes you may vehemently disagree with some people, but you just have to be okay with the fact that, this is not the war that you need to fight. I'll give you an example of that. Look, I wanted to change Columbus Day on the calendar, right? Like small thing. I was like, look, I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, hey guys, we all know what's up with Columbus Day. Like, you can call it Italian Heritage Day. You know, I was actually cool with that. I was like, call it Italian Heritage Day, right? People should know it's for the Italians. Yeah. And we'll also call it Indigenous Peoples Day, right? Like recognize what's happening. And I had written an op-ed. I'd been out in public. I had talked to the Italian organizations about this. I go to my board meeting, and my allies killed it. Refused to vote on this. Refused to have any movement on it. We're like, what are you talking about, genocide of Native Americans, right? We're like, denying history, right? And I went out to the public, and I was like, oh, like this item's just not going to move. And I didn't embarrass them, right? Because I knew, like, hey, I'm going to need your votes to help me increase minimum wage for teachers. I'm going to need your votes to help cancel student lunch debt. So, like, I can't burn these bridges right now. What we see right now, honestly, is we have a council and a mayor that go back and forth where, like, they're just trying to burn each other.
Yeah.
And, like, that is not productive in terms of the city and how to move forward. Because ultimately, like, we're in this together. And I think part of this, too, is, like, people need to know you're locked into the city for the long run. If someone thinks I'm going to be here for 4 years and I'm moving on to something else, all right, like, why do I care? This person's not going to be here anymore. They're not invested in the city. But again, for me, like, this is the only place I know that's home, right? I've been here my entire life. Like, literally, I remember when I got into Harvard for law school, right? If you go back and look at that article, literally my quote is, I can't wait to come back to Jersey City. Because I always knew this is always, my place was going to be home, right? At law school, people always knew me as Mr. Jersey City. That's all I talked about, right? So to me, like, having that sort of, like, embodiment from the leader where he says, listen, like, this is home, and we need to protect here. We need to make sure that it's safe here. We need to make sure that people feel welcome here and need to be here for the long run. Like, I think that's the kind of leadership that the city needs.
Yeah. What do you think about the cannabis stuff? Tell me, like, the whole rollout. I'm sure you have an opinion on how it went.
Look, I think that the city had sort of gone back and forth on a lot of these issues, right? At some point, they were talking about caps. They were talking about, like, how to have distance between different cannabis shops. And then they sort of, like, retreated. And I'll be honest with you, I think a lot of this goes into special interests, right? The reality for me also is, like, we're the only candidate that's running in this race that doesn't take any money from pay-to-play contributions. What that means is, like, if you have a city contract, right? If you are a city law firm, if you're a city vendor, you do insurance for us, right? If you're a cannabis shop that got a city license through the city council to get cannabis, you should not be donating to my campaign.
We know.
Right? I mean, this is the truth, right? Like, the reality is, you know, when people talk about this corruption tax in Hudson County, it's like, hey, I'm going to get this cannabis contract for somebody that I know. They're going to give me money. They're going to make sure I'm taken care of. And who suffers is the taxpayer and the overall city as residents. And so we've taken a pledge, and it's an expensive pledge, I'll be honest with you. I have vendors who are willing to give us tens of thousands of dollars, right? Tens of thousands of dollars. If they're like, hey, like, just make sure when you get in office, you take care of us. Or even if they don't say that, implicitly, like, we understand what they're saying. Yep. But I've made it very clear, if you have a city contract, I will not take your money. Because I do not want to be in a compromised position where I get in office and now suddenly you're like, hey, like, you know, remember I gave you that $10,000, $50,000. Whereas, like, I have opponents who have taken $50,000 from insurance brokers that they voted for their contracts. Yeah. Like, how is that fair?
Yeah. But let me explain the bigger challenge when it's an emerging market, right? That those groups already exist. And my issue with the position of how the council sees cannabis is that they say, well, other industries band together and they come and they talk to us and we don't understand. And I'm like, band together? We're brand new.
Right.
We barely talk to each other. You already created a contentious environment in an already unstable, volatile industry. How do you expect? We don't have coalitions. We don't have groups. There's no way for us to get movement. And because everybody is in this survival mode, no one is talking to each other. So, you know, it really seems like we don't have a support in the city. But at the same time, the city is heavily relying on us. And it's going to rely on us in the future.
Yep. It's
already showing how much revenue we're bringing in tax revenue. And if it was a more stable environment, like, you know, there's one that just closed on Tunnel 8, if there wasn't so many, but if we had less, but we're making more, the tax revenue that the city is going to get, I mean, we're looking at $5 million. I think we're already at about $500,000.
Yeah.
This is something that needs to be considered in your budget. You know, so every time I talk to a candidate, they don't know enough about cannabis when it's a huge part of what you're going to be overseeing for your budget. How do you intend to use that money? How do you intend to stabilize this environment that you're going to inherit?
Yeah. Look, I think that one of the big things for us to learn from is that we're not the first city to do this, right? Like I think Colorado was one of the first states to do this. And so you look in Denver and you can see the way that, you know, to your point, right? When it started, massive proliferation of cannabis shops. And then suddenly, like, people realize, like, wait, actually, this industry is not that big. Right. And now suddenly you have shops that are closing down and people anticipate certain revenues and now they don't have them. But I think that a bigger point here that can be made is this thing about the city being the conduit to bring people together, right? So, like, the city should actually sit down the business owners, because you in your individual, in your individual marketplace, like, you're a business, you're competing. Right. Like, why are you going to go to the other guy and be like, hey, here's my numbers, here's my trade secrets? Yep. Like, why would you do that? There's no incentive for you to do that. Yep. But the city should actually bring people together and say, okay, look, as business owners, what are the challenges you're facing, yep. right? Like, how do we think about, as a city, how can we create a regulatory environment that helps you to thrive? Yep. How can we foster coordination where maybe some of you merge together, yep. right? But I say that because what frustrates me is, the same thing on cannabis, you can think about the same thing when it comes to philanthropy. So cannabis has been sort of a cudgel for us because it's like helping us to fund youth environments, right? Like the youth summer recreation, some of these other programs. But if you think about philanthropy, I want you to think about Newark and think about New York City. New York City has all these foundations, right? Rockefeller Foundation, and all these big ones. Newark has the MCG Amelia Foundation, has the Victoria Foundation, Prudential Foundation, PSEG's Foundation, right? Where are Jersey City's big foundations? They don't exist, right? Like, think about one big company in Jersey City that's really giving back. We have Goldman Sachs here, JP Morgan here, DTCC here. Yep. When's the last time we saw Goldman Sachs do something in Central Avenue? Right? Unheard of. Right. But in Newark, it would be unheard of that Prudential is not investing in something in Newark, right?
Great point.
And I think the reason that happens, right, is we as a city don't foster that environment. We don't bring the philanthropic players together and leverage and say, listen, you are benefiting from being in the city. Yeah. What are you doing to give back? And honestly, these companies want to give back, right? Part of their CSR is like, hey, like, we want to find ways that we can invest in the city and the community, but our city doesn't create those openings. Right. And so I think for a lot of this, we've missed out on opportunities that are here right in front of us, because I think the city has not been focused on how do you bring all these players together.
Yeah.
I think where a number of municipalities have missed the boat on cannabis is that they look at it as a cash grab. Mm-hmm. They look at it, we're going to charge $1 gazillion for a license, and we're going to keep these exorbitant fees going because we want to bring in that revenue. But they're not looking at how to build a stable market. How do you fix that in New Jersey? Because no offense, you guys are doing the cash grab too. Jersey City is going crazy with how much they're charging with licensing.
Our fees went from $10,000, just for this space. It's $10,000. It went up in just 1 year to 15. Wow. That's 50%.
That's a 50% increase, yeah.
So to see, again, all the people on the council fight for affordable housing and the rent increases, and it's like, this is a fee increase for us too. Yeah. And it's something that will impact people's sustainability.
And talk about the consumption lounge. What is on top of that?
The consumption lounge fee is $25,000.
Really?
Yes. So right upstairs, that's supposed to be a consumption lounge. It's not open yet because the city council cannot. They don't have a body yet. They don't have a CCB. The board has been dismantled, and they're still trying to put it back together. So we haven't gotten any movement on that. But the fee is $25,000. And from just an economic perspective, how does that make any sense?
Well, I mean, look, you think about this, right?
Understand, this is the driver. This is what sells weed. Upstairs doesn't sell weed. What am I selling?
No, but what I'm saying is, think about it. What they're doing is they're only making it so institutional players can play, right? They are basically taking all the small guys. Yeah.
How do you fix that?
So, look, I think
You're the mayor. You get to lead.
So, I think if we're the mayor, we get to lead. The first thing we do is, one, we bring the cannabis players together, right?
What players? Are you talking dispensary owners?
All the dispensary owners. We bring all the dispensary owners together. We bring together people who are making consumption lounges, right? Okay. To both understand, what is their vision for what these consumption lounges are going to look like. Uh-huh. Because I think in order to regulate an industry, you need to first understand, okay, how are we going to think about this industry? What is the industry going to look like? So these lounges, like you said, right? These are places where we're not actually selling the weed. This is just where people are consuming them. It's more of like a social club, right? Think about it like a cigar lounge. Mm-hmm. It's very similar, right? What are we doing when it comes to these cigar lounges? Are we charging them $25,000? And they're not, right? So I think you go there and you say, okay, this is what the end goal is going to be. How do I explain this to the public, right? I think a big part of what the mayor's job is actually taking these really complicated policies and things that people don't know about and things that are stigmatized, especially, right? Because cannabis, still stigmatized, right? Yes. A lot of people... Extremely, right? I mean, a lot of people still think about this in a way of cannabis is grade 4 drug, is not federally declassified yet. How do we explain this to people where we say, hey, listen, what we're doing here, it's a very safe, environment. we're allowing people to like work together. Here's the sort of like get benefit to the community. Here's the ways that we can sort of regulate it. And this is what the end vision is supposed to be. And sometimes you're going to mess up, right? And like sometimes there are going to be incidents that happen. But ultimately, like I think as a city leader, your job is to get the public on board with what you're trying to build and make sure that you're not making it where it's just the institutional players who can make all the money. Because the biggest frustration that I have, I'll be honest with you, when I look at Jersey City, is, you know, as someone who's grown up here, I think about Jersey City and I say, listen, like we're the home of Ellis Island, right? We've never been afraid of new people coming in here. But the problem that's happened is all the wealth that's being created is not being shared with the people who are from here, right? They don't feel like these buildings are like providing anything back to them. And so how do we make it so that people actually feel a part of the new industry that's coming in, right? Like I don't want just institutional cannabis players to be the players who can benefit from everything that's happening. Because if you're charging really high fees, they're the only ones who are going to be able to pay that. And so now they have a monopoly on this environment. And so how is that actually giving back to the people that, you know, cannabis reform was meant to give back to?
You have a lot of firsts in your career. For youngest guy elected in New Jersey, youngest Muslim American out there to have office. Would you be willing to be the first mayor out there speaking about his own cannabis use? I mean, you had spoken to us prior to this camera about your own personal journey of wellness and dealing with it when you were going through chemotherapy. Would you be willing to be out there on this topic?
Look, I'm very open with my friends about this. Like, and actually, every time I meet someone who has cancer, right, and they're going through chemotherapy, I always recommend edibles, right?
Can you tell us how you came to that? How you started your journey?
Let me think. So I get diagnosed in cancer in January of 2021.
What kind?
I had blood cancer.
Okay.
And I was 23. And the timeline of this actually is it's actually kind of like amazing in some ways of like how crazy my life became. So January of 2021, it's my first year at Harvard Law School, right? I'm a 1L. I just get elected president of the Board of Education in the middle of this pandemic, right? They're like, hey, you can go fix this, right?
You're in charge.
You're in charge. And 2 weeks into my term, I go to the doctor with this cough. I think I have long COVID. And he's like, you have stage 4 blood cancer.
Stage 4.
Stage 4. Because again, think about it, right? I had blood cancer. They found it in my lungs. Literally, they did an x-ray, right? Because they thought, oh, he had like, you know, something's up. He's coughing. And he looks at my lungs and he's like, dude, you have stage 4 blood cancer. Like this is spread all over your body. And so I remember sort of like, you know, taking this moment to myself where I was like, wow, like I'm 23, like no history of cancer in my family, right? And the type of cancer that I had was like, it's not genetic. It's literally just epigenetic, right? Just like 1 in a million shot, just happens. And so when I started chemo, I had a really tough time eating, like a really, really tough time eating. And I had a really tough time relaxing, right? Because you got to remember, I'm also dealing with a lot of pressures, right?
It's a lot of stress.
A lot of stress. And in fairness, you know, to me, like I think I try to maintain my image of this person who can like get anything done, right? Because you got to think about like when you're a young person in politics, there's always going to be the bias of like, he's young, he's inexperienced, he doesn't know what he's doing, right? So the image I sort of created for myself as a public official was there was no chinks in my armor, right? Whatever this sort of task was, I'd done my homework, I knew how to get the job done, and like I was going to be the person who could like, you know, get things to the finish line. That's why they made me the president, right? In the middle of a pandemic. They're like, hey, we know he's capable of doing it. And now for the first time in my life, I had this massive chink in my armor. Massive. Out of my control. And so, you know, frankly, I didn't actually disclose that I had cancer until the end of March. So think about it, for like 2.5 months, nobody knows I'm going through chemotherapy, right? Nobody knows sort of what's happening. And the public is relentless, right? I mean, like, look, I love parents and like, I will never criticize them for fighting for their kids. But, you know, they come at us and they say, listen, like, this is what you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. We're navigating this uncertain environment. The president had abdicated responsibility to the state. Right. State abdicated responsibility to the local. I'm sitting there. I don't have a CDC. I don't have a health officer. I don't have an epidemiologist, right? And I'm sort of making decisions. I'm in charge. So for a lot of these decisions, it was tough. So I'm having that pressure. At the same time, it's my first year of law school. And anyone who knows law school, first year is a tough one, right? Like that's the one where you're like really on the grind, right? And now I'm navigating this like health crisis. So yeah, I was stressed out, right? Like clearly, like there was a lot that was going on in my mind every single day. And I talked to my doctor. I'm like, hey, listen, like, you know, I'm not eating. I'm losing a ton of weight. And I feel the stressors of everything sort of around me. And he says to me, he's like, hey, listen, like, if you want, we can think about other ways that we can, you know, help you in this, you know, sort of like get through this journey. And one of the things he suggested was cannabis, right? He was like, hey, like, what about THC? And so...
Your doctor?
My doctor, yeah.
There are so few doctors who go that route.
Great doctor.
Yeah. So he had sort of suggested this, right? And I sort of said to myself, look, you know what? Like, why don't I go out and I try it? And I'm trying to remember what I had. It was some kind of edible chocolate bar. I can't remember like what brand or whatever, but you know, sort of tried it while I was doing chemotherapy. So literally like I would take it right before chemo and really made it easy for me like to get through the chemotherapy process and gave me a huge appetite, right? Like, you know, people talk about the munchies, like, yeah, I was eating a ton. But I needed it, right? Because literally like, you know, for those who don't know what happens during chemotherapy, like your body is basically destroying itself, right? Like you're rebuilding your whole entire body every time you're going through this process. And so I got to, you know, I felt very calm, right, when I was doing it. Because basically I would take it just when I was having chemo. So every time I was going to go into chemo, I would take some edibles. It made it a lot easier for me to eat my food. Made it a lot easier for me to like, you know, no nausea. Like I never had a nausea experience like while I was going through chemotherapy, which a lot of people have. It's one of the most common side effects. And in the end of it, like this is something that I recommend it to anytime, like, you know, people reach out to me, they're like, hey, I'm going through chemotherapy, like I'm having a tough time eating or something like that. I always recommend like, you know, trying cannabis.
And you're willing to share that story with other folks to help break through the stigma.
Yeah. Again, it really helped me, right? Like it really helped to increase the quality of my life. I think helped in terms of like, you know, the experiences that I had. And I think we made some pretty good decisions at the end of the day, right? Like, yes, it was tough navigating all these different processes, but I actually did fairly well in law school that semester. And we got our schools reopened, right? Wasn't perfect, but there was a lot of other confounding factors. We got our schools reopened. We had some really tough budget negotiations that we were able to get through. So to me, like, I don't think it impaired my ability to do my job. In fact, I think it enhanced my capacity because it sort of took care of like, you know, helping me relax and helping me make sure that I was healthy.
Mussab, it's bullshit. We all know it. I've been writing fucking policy for the MTA and doing this goddamn policy. Now I can't talk. Yeah. This podcast and a million other things. Very, very high. It's a myth. Yeah, like the whole you can't function shit. Like they gotta stop with that. Yeah. I can't tell you the amount of things that I've gotten accomplished. Very, very high. So I'm a disabled vet. So to be honest, I'm consuming all day in some capacity because I can't really function otherwise. I don't sleep well. I have been in 2 combat tours. It saves my life every single day. Yeah. So I will fight to the depths of hell for this plant. And Gretchen loves to see the people that she loved be better because she's not even a consumer at all. She just is someone who works in policy and it fights for the plant. So, you know, her MO is that she's really trying to recruit some people.
I need to, yes. I mean, I tell people personal stories matter so much.
Agreed.
Especially with politicians. I mean, bulk of the politicians I talk to work on the Hill and who have never touched the plant, or at least they don't admit to it, but don't know where we're coming from. Yeah. And when they can meet the folks who own a business and hear about the financial hardships and can't get a mortgage and all sorts of problems, or meet a patient and how much this has mattered to them. Those anecdotal stories are really what helps to turn the tide. So I'm always looking for people, frankly, no offense to Liza, with a little more credibility. Like, I'm trying to get a politician to go out there and advocate because we don't have those champions. Yeah. We don't have elected officials who are willing to stand up there and say, yes, this matters. This plan helped me. This plan could help you. Yeah. And even if you don't agree with this plant, don't stop other people from being able to try it.
Right.
We're just looking for alternatives. That's what we're trying to. And I came to cannabis, honestly, it was a total weird world. And friends needed help on the communication side. I'm like, I don't know anything about pot. They're like, no one else does either. This was like 2014. I'm like, all right. That's how I got in. But being in the industry, I've met so many people who had benefited from help, and I had a dear friend who needed it, and she had cancer, and she did not make it. And all we were trying to do was give her a better quality of life towards the end. Yeah. And we did not have legal cannabis she was in Virginia at the time. Still, they don't really have legal cannabis in Virginia. And the lengths we had to go to try and get her anything reputable. I mean, you can get it anywhere. But like stuff that I knew that worked with what her medications were and what people recommended she should take. It was jumping through a lot of hoops. And I know people in the industry, so it shouldn't have been that hard for me to find this product. Yeah. People shouldn't have to go through that fight just to have dignity and quality of life at the end.
Yeah. And listen, to go back to your point about being the mayor and being someone that is, the job is to get other people on board. I think Gretchen has a great point about, like being a mayor out there that is for cannabis and saying like, not only has it helped with my use, but I want to make sure that others have access as well, other veterans, other, groups that have been disproportionately harmed from the war on drugs. I want to ask one last thing, because we're getting close, I want to wrap, but I'm going to go a little left here, but it's only because I really love Zoran.
Who doesn't love Zoran? Who doesn't love Zoran?
Outside, I mean, I don't even say, like, it's not even that I love him because of what he's like, him being the mayor over there, right? I don't live over there. I just love the fact that he's willing to be bold and shake things up, and whether he wins or not, which we know he's going to, I think
Fingers
it just...
crossed. Fingers crossed. He's going to spend a lot of money against him, yeah.
Listen, it comes down to the fact that the authenticity is what I really, really love, and the kind of going against the status quo. Like, listen, I get the free bus thing sounds crazy. One, I worked for the MTA, and I will tell everyone firsthand, the buses were already free.
No one
right?
paid for the bus.
No one was paying for the bus. Like, the bus drivers are not going to engage with the type of difficulty that they have when it comes to that. Like, at the end of the day, it's a public service. I saw that that's a part of what you're running on. This is a very different environment than New York. How do you intend to be successful on that in Jersey City?
Yeah, so our bus pilot is a little bit different than what Zoran's trying to do. Zoran is trying to basically, the effective parallel to what he wants to do is to make NJ Transit free, right?
Okay.
That's not what we want to do.
Okay.
What we want to do is we want to take a lot of money that's being allocated to VIA and change it to a municipal run fixed route transit system. So like our own city run bus system that's completely free. And the idea, the reason we want to do that is because a lot of people within Jersey City cannot even get around town, right? And so this would allow people an affordable option that could be fast, right? Because 80% of the signals in Jersey City are city run. So you could actually put a transponder in the bus so that whenever it reaches a light, like it's going to be a green light. Or if it's yellow, it stays yellow a little bit longer for the bus. So yeah, literally you could make it a fast bus that is also free, because the amount that we could subsidize it to the degree that we're subsidizing VIA could make it completely free for everybody to get on it. And now this allows people to get around town. It makes it affordable, and it makes it connected to your GPS, right? Like, we can actually have a really effective system. And a lot of cities have done this, right? Like, we would not be the first. Hoboken has their own, like, hop shuttle that's completely free, right? Like, it is actually crazy to me that Jersey City is not investing in these kinds of ideas, because we're a very dense city. We're large enough. We have enough capital to, like, invest in these kinds of ideas.
What do you think was the idea of VIA versus something like that? Because, I mean, VIA has worked, I guess, generally pretty well, but it also is just, like, per group. But VIA
is like an Uber, right?
That's what I'm saying.
Like literally, I mean, actually think about this. Per ride on VIA, the city subsidizes like $11 per person.
Wow.
Like, imagine like you pay $2, but the city's actually subsidizing 11. So imagine I was telling you, like, hey, every time you take a VIA, the city's paying $11. People would think that's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But like a bus that you would take, the subsidy of that, even just completely free, would be around $5 or $6. So like, I would rather have more effective transportation that moves people faster, right? That is reliable, right? Sometimes in VIA, like I was on Ocean the other day at a senior center, and I just, I was talking to one of my staff members. I was like, let's see how long it takes to get to VIA. The first VIA would come in 30 minutes, right? And now imagine, if someone wants to go from downtown, someone wants to go to the Heights. Okay, we're both getting in that VIA. Who's going to get to where they want to go first?
Right.
It's just, we've always known fixed route transit makes more sense, because we all get in the bus and we know this one's going to the Heights, this one's going to downtown, this one's going to Greenville. Like, all right, let's get on the bus and get to the bus we want.
Yeah.
But the idea that we keep subsidizing this product, that's also a public-private partnership. I mean, they are driven to drive a profit. Like, that's their job.
Right.
And public transportation, the reason it's public transportation, we know we lose money, right? But that's the service that we're providing.
Yeah.
So to me, like, I think that some of these ideas, like, they sound bold on paper, like, oh, like, that's crazy, he wants free buses.
Yeah.
But like, when you actually like walk through the numbers, it's very effective.
Yep.
And it's actually more efficient for our city to do that.
Yep. That's why I love long form content. Like, people don't ever want to do it, but you have to, so people can understand, because the clickbait sounds crazy.
Yeah.
Free buses sound crazy. But for me, when I heard him say that, it didn't sound crazy to me, because I worked for the MTA. And I'm like, this is not a business. This is not intended to drive profit.
Exactly.
We spend the money, like, the Albany is subsidizing most of the MTA anyway. And then for whatever we make, our capital improvements cost so much money. Oh my God, it's a nightmare. So, Gretchen, what you got?
I got one last question for you.
Okay.
We know that you're popular with the younger crowd. The younger crowd never shows up to vote.
Ooh.
How are you going?
Stink.
Well, it's true. how are you going to drive that voter turnout? And frankly, in an off year, you really kind of need that turnout. For
That's true. And look, but I will say this. I don't think I'm just popular with the younger crowd.
okay.
I'll be honest, like, we knock on doors, and I'll be honest, like, I have senior citizens who say to me all the time, like, we need a young person, right? And very quickly, I'll show the anecdote from Pete Buttigieg. When Buttigieg was running for mayor of South Bend, they actually ran an ad. He was 29 years old. They ran this ad, like, who is this 29-year-old trying to be the mayor of South Bend? Right? And the seniors actually loved the fact that he was young. So I think that people just assume that because I'm young, like, I have the young crowd. And I think we do have the young crowd for sure. But I think that our reach actually spans across a lot of generations. Because I also think, I think about my story as a very Jersey City story, right? My parents are both union workers. I grew up and I went to the public schools here. I was elected to office by this city twice, citywide. I went to Harvard Law School and chose to come back to do public service in Jersey City. Like, in so many ways, I think that there's so many people in this city who tell me that they're proud of me, right? They're like, hey, like, we want our kids to be able to look at you and say, you know what, we can do that too. But I will say, look, I think the same way Mamdani sort of mobilized young people, we are sort of seeing that effect in Jersey City as well. I have people who are 18 who literally come to me who are like, I registered to vote just to vote for you, right? We have people who have never been engaged in the political system before who are saying to me like, hey, I want to be involved. I want to volunteer. I want to knock on doors. And I think that is a sort of mobilization that you need to transform the electorate, not just for the short term, but for the long run. Because to me, like, I want to win this election, right? To be clear.
Yeah.
But in the long run, if I'm also transforming the electorate, I'm changing who votes. And I'm changing who politicians are accountable to. Because now that I'm getting this 18-year-old who says, I'm registering to vote for you, he's going to want to vote again in 4 years. Or he's going to vote again next year, right, for the school board. And now he's going to have to pay more attention. And the politician's going to have to pay attention because that guy's going to be in his comments like, hey, you're not taking care of my interests, right? You're not fighting for the things that I believe in. And so to me, like, transforming the electorate, especially what Mamdani's done, is like now every member of Congress that's in New York understands like, hey, this electorate has changed. Yeah. I can't just rely on my voters anymore. I have to deal with the needs and the wants of these younger voters who have felt locked out of this capitalistic system where they do not feel like they can acquire wealth. They don't feel like they can get ahead. They feel like they're going to be perpetually in debt. And I think people like me, I mean, I don't think I'll ever be able to afford a home here in Jersey City. I mean, think about it, right? Like, how am I ever going to be able to buy a property here? And I think there's so many of us that feel locked out. And the reality is also this, right? Jersey City's median age is 34 years old. 18 to 40-year-olds make up 50.1% of the adult population of Jersey City. So the majority is actually more my generation than it is these other guys who are running. So to me, it's like the natural thing for me to do is to say, hey, like, why don't we just fight for someone that looks like us, that sounds like us, that understands our values? And I think I see that across the city.
I hear you. However, how do you get them to show up at the polls?
So I think there's two like tangible ways, right?
Yeah.
One is we have a really big like social media like touch point process where like once someone follows us, we actually like go through the whole process, make them register to vote, and like get them into our GeoTV process. Like we actually send automated DMs to everybody who follows us, right? The second thing that we do is in terms of knocking on doors, we're not just knocking the 3 out of 3 voters. Right? This is part of the thing that Mamdani was working on too, right? Is like we knock zero prime voters, people who have never voted, who we feel like can be engaged in this process, who are progressive, right? Because you can see the progressive score of these young people. You can also see people who have, different backgrounds, like immigrants, Muslim backgrounds, right? Saying like, hey, listen, how do we get them engaged in this process? And here's the interesting thing. It's not actually that I'm doing this for the first time. So when I ran for office between 2016 and 2018, we increased youth voter turnout by 4,000% in 3 years. When I was 19 to when I was 21, the amount of people between 18 and 25 that turned out to vote, like literally increased by 4,000%. And we did that because I think a lot of young people saw me and were like, hey, that guy looks like me, right? He represents my values. He sounds like me. He's fighting for what I believe in. And so I want to go up and show up for him. And for so often, right, like we've had politicians who don't inspire anybody. I mean, I'll be honest, like, listen, I have a lot of respect for the people who are running in this race. Mm-hmm. How many of them are going to inspire new voters to say, I want to go out there and vote? How many of them? And especially if we have a runoff situation, right? Sure. Like, think about, we will have a runoff in Jersey City. There's 6 of us running. No one's going to get over 50%.
Yeah.
I think about that runoff, and I say, look, if there's a one-on-one matchup where it's McGreevy versus me between November and December for 1 month, it's the only election in the country. That matchup of a former disgraced governor versus like a young Muslim progressive immigrant. I mean, I just think naturally there's a lot of people who are going to talk about that story of like, hey, this just happened in New York City. We can do this in Jersey too. And so to me, like, that is the matchup that I think the city should want, is like the two of us fighting against each other could not be more diametrically opposed. Versus I think some of the other ones who are running against each other, like yes, I think everyone has their own sort of lane that they're running on. But I think so much about like someone who's from the city, who has a sort of understanding of what it means, to be from here, and also has legislative and executive experience.
Sure.
Versus someone who's like coming in and trying to say, hey, like, I was disgraced and now I need a second chance. Like, where's my second chance? Where's my first chance?
Speaking of your opponent.
I smell a manifestation.
He clearly has experience. What in your background do you think makes you the better candidate, despite whatever skeletons he has in his closet?
Yeah, we ask everybody this.
Yeah.
The man clearly has
100%.
some issues, but he also has a lot of experience.
Right.
I agree. Look, I would say, first, let's start here. I don't think, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. I don't think the kind of politics that he embodies, which has gotten us to the position that we are today, is the solution moving forward. If the Democratic Party says, hey, we're just going to recycle old politicians and expect a different outcome, like, this is why Democrats are polling at some of the lowest that they have been in, like, the last 35 years, right? Sure. So I think that's one part of this. The second part of this is I think I have a very unique background in the sense that I can both understand the people who are moving here, the young people who are coming here, who have a vision for what they want to see the city being, but also understanding people who are from here, who feel the frustration about, being forced to move out of the city, feeling like they no longer can afford to be here. They see these luxury towers and they say, that's not built for me. That's not helping me, right? And I think that what I really want to be able to do is connect both parts of that city, right? Because I think this is the real frustration we've had here. They've talked about Jersey City as a tale of two cities over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think that people look at downtown and say, these are the haves and we're the have-nots. And where is my city government? Why are my streets filled with litter, right? Why are you not fixing my potholes? Like, why do I feel like everything is going towards one part of the city? And I think you need a mayor who can represent all of Jersey City, right? Who has that background. I mean, literally just from going to school, I lived and interacted with all different parts of the city. So to me, like, I'm not scared to be in Greenville and on Ocean Avenue. Like, I know what it's like to be in the Heights. I have memories of learning how to bike in Riverview Park, right? Going to Mosquito Park and playing with my friends, like being in downtown. Like, these are all parts of the city that are familiar to me because of my lived experience. And I think you need somebody who has that background, who understands like both parts of the city in order to bring them together.
I know we said we were going to wrap. We are in a regulated environment, so we got to make sure this happens. Yeah, John, watch the clock. But you said something that I want to make sure that we really, really emphasize, because I think we keep talking about the affordable housing, the buildings, the change in the environment, and things like that. But you mentioned the group in Jersey City being 18 to 41. And I think a lot of times people, leaders, are not analyzing the migration and the reason, right? And I'm gonna use myself because I'm within that age range, and my partner, my wife. We lived in Jersey City for a very long time. I obviously own many businesses here, and then I also still own property, but I am no longer a resident. And I'm no longer a resident because it got too expensive. I got pushed out because I had one child, and then when I knew I was gonna be having another, the type of space that I would need, the level up was just a cost that I couldn't take, right? But if Jersey City gave me everything that I really needed, I probably would have figured it out. I maybe would have bought something that I had to fix, or I would have made it work. But I had to analyze other things. And the primary thing that my wife in particular, who works at Rutgers University, she's in education, was school. And we had to consider, am I gonna break my back, right, in my wallet to get a 3 or 4 bedroom house to stay in a city that has terrible, terrible schools that I have to then pay maybe for one of my son to go to prep, or hope that my daughter can get into McNair or Hudson County Prep? That's not what somebody who pays $1 million for a property has an expectation to have to know that, I only have this time period that I can live here, because when my kids get to this age, they just can't be in this environment and we have to move. And that really messes with what the long-term sustainability of residents looks like in this city, because they don't want to live here. You are uniquely positioned because obviously you were the president of the BOE, but then also in being mayor, this is another thing that gets punted around when you talk to the mayor or the council about the schools. they say it's the board's
Board of Ed's
problem.
problem.
It's the Board of Ed's problem, right? And then, so what are you going to do? Because the reality is that I didn't want to leave here. I would have loved to have my daughter go to school here and really, really ground all of my roots here. And that's why people can't have the long-term investment in their city, because people show up to council meetings. People care about the parks being clean. People care. That layer of them gets activated when they have kids.
Yeah. This is great, actually. I wish we had like a chart I could show you guys. I don't know if you guys can like put up like a graph, but like if you look at the census graph of Jersey City, so I did like a 45-page report at Rutgers Law School about Newark, Jersey City, and Patterson, looking at displacement. The number one indicator of when someone moves out of Jersey City is when their kid turns 5.
Yes.
Number one indicator,
Yep.
right? So like literally, if you look at this graph, it's like massive on the bottom, and then like the kid turns 5 and like goes in like this,
Yep.
right? And gets even smaller when it gets to the high school level. And again, right, as someone who's served on the Board of Education, like I understand there are so many fundamental problems that you have to fix. But when the schools and the city are fighting against one another, you are not solving any problems. The mayor needs to be the number one cheerleader of the schools. Mm-hmm. He needs to be thinking constantly about how do we improve our educational outcomes? How do we get these businesses involved? Yeah. How do we think about this other statistic. Only 17% of people who live in Jersey City work in Jersey City.
Yep.
That's one of the smallest populations of any major city in the country. And the reality is the amount of people who come to work in Jersey City is almost equal to the amount of people who leave Jersey City for work. So it's not that the jobs aren't here. We have the commercial district here. We have the environment.
Right.
And so what I think about is like, hey, how do we make sure that one, our schools are really effective and there's accountability in our school system? Yeah. So that means supporting people to be on the Board of Education, standing with the Board of Education, saying, hey, I am going to work with them, not against them. When I was on the Board of Ed, I literally had letters from the mayor targeting us when we had a $250 million state aid cut. Instead of us working together and saying, hey, governor, why are you cutting all this funding from our schools? Mm-hmm. We had the mayor pointing a finger at us. We had the governor taking away our funding. And we had to sit there and just fight to like reopen our schools, right? Fight to make sure that we had enough to like have teachers like stay in our classrooms. And like that is not a sustainable environment. You go to any other city that has good schools, the number one thing the mayor's going to talk to you about is like education. Yeah. Education. I mean, that is the most important service the city provides. Yes. And it does not matter that the mayor doesn't control the Board of Ed. Right. The mayor is the biggest influencer in the city. That's it. The buck stops with you. And so, again, nobody else has that experience on the Board of Ed. No one else has those relationships. Yeah. And I think that's something that we really want to leverage here, right? Yes. To make sure that people know what it means to be accountable. Yes. And we can also share some of the good things, right? Because I know people think our schools all suck, okay? I know that that's what's out there. I'll be honest, they do a terrible job on communications, right? You never see positive headlines out of the Board of Ed. But I'll give you a great example of one thing, right? Dickinson High School. People think like, oh, my kid got into Dickinson, sucks. Terrible outcomes. Dickinson actually has a program with Hudson County Community College where your kid can graduate with an associate's degree at the end of 4 years. They will get their high school diploma and an associate's degree in 4 years. Wow. At Dickinson. Wow. Same thing at Ferris. Same thing at Snyder with some students. How many people know about that? Yeah. Right? We don't talk about that. Because again, like our education system has sort of been this like ugly stepchild that like has drained our property taxes. So we don't want to talk about it. We just want to put blame on it. And this has been my biggest frustration with this current mayor, right? Is he pretends like the Board of Ed is not my responsibility. Yeah. Go to any other city in this country, in this state. Everyone is going to tell you, hey, yes, I'm the mayor. I think about the Board of Ed all the time. We work in collaboration. Yes. And you must.
Education and public safety and municipal services. I don't know why, just fundamental things that we need. But I just have one last thing that I is a favor of mine that I just want you to do in the event that you win. Okay. Please give the cannabis money to the schools. Please. The rec thing was cute, whatever. That was obviously a quick solution because who gives rec money in the middle of the summer, 4th of summer? Yeah. But please give it to the schools because just give it to the schools. You guys heard it here first. In Jersey City, put the pressure, whoever becomes the mayor, they need to give the cannabis money to the schools. We need to be supporting them. Agreed. People are going to leave. I didn't want to have to leave. Like, I can't.
I'll tell you, look at that graph. It's fascinating.
We're going to do the, editing young Gen Z stuff that you guys do. Get it up there. All right. Awesome. Listen, thank you so much. I'm really excited to continue to watch your campaign and see all your great ideas. Thank you. At the end of the day, even if you don't win, I think what you said about transforming and just making, getting the voters out, getting younger people to understand how critical not only politics is, but local politics and understanding that they're the future.
100%.
Gretchen?
Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Until next time, this is Coffee and Cannabis. Peace.